All right, a happy Friday to all. Sam here with you. And as it is Friday, that means it's Bitcoin. So we are going to dig in here and take a look at Bitcoin. Some interesting things happening here. So what's interesting about Bitcoin here is we have a couple of different ways that we can count this. The difference between the two is actually is relatively small, and we've got some conflicting messages here, which I'm going to dig into here just to try and make sense of here. So what I have here, this is my primary count, and we're going to look at two counts here. They're very subtle in the differences, and their impact also very subtle, but it's worth noting. It's worth noting they're not inconsequential, but very, very minor differences between the two. So the whole premise here is that we're working from a technical pivot down here, which I've identified many times previously, and that we have a very deep internal retracement. So there is the possibility that we have a 1-2, right? We stay internal. We don't violate this pivot. We go incredibly deep, but internal is internal. Like, we don't take out the slow. So we have the possibility now for this to be correcting this move higher, possibly a 2 wave. And that this now is the start of our new trend. Right? That's the contender. Where it gets a little tricky, and it's really there's no way to know which count is going to be right until we see the result over here. So we can't confirm either one of these counts, but we can make a very strong educated guess, if you will. We can use our probabilities to help us refine where the next opportunity to get long is, but not to mention there's not a bad opportunity to be to be going short here if indeed you're comfortable going short. Now you've got a very low risk entry setting up here as a possibility. So let me just for the exercise, because there's some good things to learn here. Let me dig in here on what I have down here as this low. So the way I have it now, I have this as our 1, 2. Here's my 3 down here. And I'm completing this, my 4 over here, and then I come down for my 5, and we're working from this low as the technical pivot to move towards what I propose is a 1 wave. So I'm just basing that off of a couple of things. So here's all the subdivision that I see. So this seems fairly solid that we've got now our 2 wave here. So as we get a lower high, right? So we retrace, it's deep, right? Everything has been deep within Bitcoin. So here's my 1, my 2, down I go. I've got great subdivision here all the way down into this third. Now, this is where it gets a little tricky. So as I see it, I'm looking for subdivision and I'm looking for fib relationship. So pulling from my 2, if I've got this correctly labeled and that's my 3 low, well, the expectation is the 4 is going to come in right at the 38, as it does. So to get that to fit and work, what I'm seeing here is an A and then an expanded B wave, an expanded flat essentially. And then we go into our C wave here at the 38 that puts in the 4. Well, if that's the 4, geez, that's annoying. TradingView does that. If that's my 4, God, I can't get that individually. Well, then I come down here for my 5, and you can see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and I complete with 5. It's that move there that has me leaning towards this as a completed 5. Now, take note here that if this is an expanded flat, if I have this correctly identified as the 4 here, there we go, and I finally can get it. If I have this as my 4 and I'm coming down for my 5, well, if this is the third and I have an expanded flat, then technically I do not have a truncated fifth here. Because if this is my low here, just barely, I'm putting in a new low here. Right, all a function of what I see here. What am I on? 2 hour? Let me go down to, I'll go to a 30-minute. Excuse me. Let me reset this, and we go back over to this area down here. If I can get it. So just for that labeling, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Down we go for our 5. Let me change that color. We'll go yellow, and we can go to micro. Okay, so seeing that now, so this is the count that has this as my 4, the expanded flat here. Then I go into a 4 and I come down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm looking for a relationship between the 2 and the 4, pulled from my 3 low. Here's 38, 38. We get the wick up that challenges the 50, and then ultimately comes down here. But note, we're left hanging. We don't get the target. right? That target is not hit down here. Here's my algo target right here in green. We don't get that target, so the market is kind of, you know, left hanging, and but then we've ripped away from it. So the foundation for my count here is the 5-wave structure here. So it looks much more to me like a 5-wave than an ABC, although it could be counted that way. It could be. You could have this. I mean, so shit. Well, that's frustrating. Okay, so we could have 3, 4, 5 of an A wave, B, and then coming down for a C to finish it. So it's possible, right? That's what's making this a bit frustrating. There are multiple ways that you can count this. And the only tell is going to be the reaction on the next retracement. That's the only way we're going to know which one of these is accurate. The other thing we could do, of course, anytime we have 3 pivots like this, we can look for any market geometry. Is there anything here to help me with this? Well, that's obviously not going to help. Let's go back to original. All right, see if there's anything there that's helpful to me. You know, it's not ideal, not perfect. So swing, if I can get that right on there, swing low. High down here, you know, we're hover around the median line, but we don't tag it. So there's nothing perfect to help me identify this. But this looks pretty reasonable to me. So let me pull that off. So that's the premise. So why does any of that matter? Okay, so you can say, well, interesting exercise. Why do I care? Well, the reason you care, so I'm going to go, let's go, let me just zoom out here. The reason you care is because it's a function of where the next opportunity is, because we're trying to identify, is this a 1 wave that's completed now here, a motive wave, an impulsive structure here that's completed. So let me get some of this off. I hate when I do that. I don't want you. Okay, so if working from this low, we do get this 5-wave structure. If it's a 1 wave, well, it matters to us because we're now trying to identify the next 50, right? We know the high probability for a second wave is between the 50 and the 618. Now, granted, there are times when it'll be as shallow as a 38, very strong market. But all we can do is play the odds, right? So if I delete that now, and let me get some of this off. And we think about, okay, if this is a 1 wave, then I got to label it like this. So coming off of this low down here, this is my 1. I'm looking for a 2, 3, 4, and 5 up here. Let's go something bigger. We'll get up to minuet. Okay, so possibility here that from this is my hard low. I've completed my 1 wave. If that's a 1 wave, I'm looking for a 3-wave subdivision on my correction. Looks like I've got it already. I'm looking for a 3-wave subdivision to get me down to my 50. So if I just draw it now, so I'm working from my absolute low down here up to my high. Here's my 50, right? That's my zone that I'm looking for. Interestingly, right at the point of control. Right, so we have this, you also see this is a common retracement zone, the prior 3 to 4. Right, from this move up, common retracement point. We have some structural resistance and that's potentially now offering some support, but we have it in a couple of different spots. We have it here. We have it where I have wicked off here as my 3rd. I also have it here potentially as the what I see as that could be the 3rd of the 3rd. So we've got these structural pivots up here where we had prior resistance that can kick in here for potential support. So if I've got this right here, and this is our low here, and we've gone 1, 2, and this is the 1 wave, well, we're now looking for this 3-wave subdivision. So if I dig in here, how can we get there? If this is my target down here, how am I going to get there? Well, I'm looking for 3 waves, and I'm looking for all the necessary subdivision that would help me identify where I am in that count. So working from this as my completed 5-wave structure, I get a pretty clean 5 waves coming down, right? I mean, hard to argue with that as an A wave. Well, from there, I get a little shallow A, B, and then I get this 5 wave again here. Potentially, we don't know. This could go higher, but I've got the ingredients here for a completed B wave with the appropriate subdivision. I've got my A, my B, and my C, and all that necessary subdivision there. Now, this can go higher. So if we look at this in terms of the fib swing, so if I take the length of my A wave, right? So this should surprise nobody. That where do we go? Right to the right. Anyone who watches me, I should say, right to the golden zone. Okay, so no surprise that that's where we get a pivot. Now, is that the absolute pivot? Do we have a B wave? Well, we don't know because this could go higher. If we're going to go up here, we could go to the 786. We could go to the 887. We could have an expanded flat. There's a lot of scenarios here. But if we're going to roll over here, then from that, well, here's my algo target. Right, but here's my 50, so I've got to get beyond. So I really have to get to the second target. Right, this would be indecisive here. If we put in our second between the 38 and the 50, it's hard for us to identify whether it's a second or a fourth, and we'll get to that in a second. So again, it's a function of if we're going to roll over here, then we can start looking for the subdivision here relative to this yellow count here. So if I've got A in, B in, if that's in, again, we don't know, then I'm looking for 5 coming down. Now, if this is going to go higher, if we're going to push higher today or over the weekend, this still plays as a B wave. So we can relabel this. This could be up here as my 5th. So let me take that off. So if we're going to get through the golden zone, it certainly is a possibility that this could be our 4. We can't say for sure yet. So I could have a 1, 2, and then I've got all the subdivision into my 3rd, and that there's another push up here to give me my 5th, which challenges the 786, could be 887. All of those, that's all possible. Right? We'll know, can we get through on the other side of the 65? If we get through the 65, of course, then algos will be looking for the next 50. So this remains to be seen. It's either this is the 4 here, or there's a 4 going in now. Well, we're not going to know until we see how this resolves. When do we start heading lower? And do we start heading lower? So a little bit of, there's no way to call it. No way to know what you've got there until you need more information, more data. I need to see a tell. I need to see some evidence. Are we going to the 50 to the 38? So if we think about that, right, as we sit here right now, it looks like the contender is right here. So there's the C wave, there's our B wave, right? So we can put a pitchfork on that. So from my pivot up here down to my A wave low, right? If that's my B, if we don't know, if that's my B, well, what do I have? Well, I have a setup here. I have a golden corner pocket, right? So right in the golden zone, now we don't know, but if that pivot holds, then I've got an 80% probability of getting to the median line at some point here. Well, that's going to be awfully abrupt. Maybe we have to go to a modifier because of the time element here. How long is it going to take to get down here? Well, now we're outside of the bounds of that. I could consider a modifier here. So if I went to modified shifts, going to essentially give me a channel. So that might play a little bit better. Do we hit it here? Here? Right? We just no way to know just yet. We don't even know if we've got a good pivot here yet. It's just too tight. Too tight. So we wait and see. Does this pivot hold? Are we going up to the 786, going higher? Well, if this is a one wave, it matters because the next opportunity is all the way down here at the 50, which is bringing Bitcoin back to, call it 8150. All right, are we going that low again? Well, let's consider the alternate, right? So we've got all of this lined up here, and let me pull out again. So if it's a 2, we want to be a buyer down here between the 50 and the 618. There's our buy zone. All right, we're gonna have to have a fairly extensive subdivision in our C wave to get down there, because just looking at that I can see. So if I look for common relationships from my A wave projected from the proposed B wave, right? So if I jiggle these so you can see them, that's right on my 618. Well, here's my 100 right here, which would in effect be requiring a front run here on the 50 contender. Here's my 1272, right? The two most common targets for a C relative to the A, 100, 1272. All the way down here at the 1618, that would be an extreme, but that gets me on the other side of the 65. So it's a question of, am I looking to be a buyer at the 50, between the 50 and the 100? Right now, that's where I'm looking. This is what I see. Now, here's the alternative, which actually does not help a whole lot. That's the bad news about where we are. So let me come over here and show you the alternate count. Let's see. How do I want to do this? Okay, I can make this fairly easy and quick. All right. So the alternate count because of this pivot here being the absolute low of that swing, and this staying internal and not violating this low. The alternate, sorry guys, is that I've got this. That is annoying. If I can, for some reason, it won't let me. This would be so. If I can, I can't get it by itself. All right, well, let's just relabel it. That'll be faster. All right, let me get rid of that. So let me show you this because that's kind of annoying. There we go. Okay, so that would be 3, 4. That would be 5. Okay, so we'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But right, so here's where, this is why I don't like this count as much. So, and I've seen people proposing this count. So it's not that it's not valid, it's just that I don't like the structure as much here as a 1, 2 because of that 5-wave structure. So the idea would be that I would have a 1, 2 here because I stay internal to this low. That would make this a 3. We're putting in a 4 and there's a 5. So let me get that into, we'll go into yellow here and we'll go up. Let me go to, I'll go to intermediate so you can see it. All right, so if that's the case, then somehow this 5-wave structure down has to be recounted as an A, B, C, which, you know, I suppose you can squeeze it in there. We'd have our A wave here, this would be our B, and then we had a very shallow C. I just don't like it as much. But let's think about it. So I'm just going to take this off here. So if that were a 1, 2, and this is my 3, right? So this would have to be my 3. We're putting in the 4, and the 5 is to come. Well, okay, so look at that. So how does it matter? Well, we know that the higher probability zone for a 4th is at the 38, between the 23 and the 38. Those are your high probability zones. But we also know that a 4 can go as deep as the 50. So you don't get a lot of help here in terms of identifying it. So it really comes back to what do you think is most likely here? Right, so if it's 1, 2, now here's the other thing to consider. If that's 1, 2, you'd anticipate that, let me take this off so I don't clutter the chart too much. You'd anticipate that there'd be some market geometry that would be helpful to us. So if I take my pitchfork and I work from my low down here to my high, and then I pull it to my proposed 2 low, well, obviously we're gonna have to change it off the modifier. Let me go back to original. So we look, excuse me, here it's a failure. God damn, sorry guys. It's a failure to make the median line. I need a mute on this mic. So 1, 2. So if this, it's weakness here. We're not able to get to the median line. So we're failing outside of this geometry. So I'm all the way over here on the 2.5. Right, that seems to be holding it. Modifier, this is too deep for a modifier to have any influence on this because it'll just, well, I'll show you. All right, so if I go to, if I go to modified shift, it's going to be see, right? We're way beyond that. So it has to be original, and that's not helping me much. That's not all. What that's showing me is a failure to make the median line implies weakness, which suggests that we're heading over here. So let me just draw it differently and take a look at this. So if that's 1, 2, right? We've got to rethink this. But note here in the other count, if I put that same pitchfork on, I can get this hot, and I go up to my proposed 1, then down to my 2, I get better framing here. All right, so we still get up to the 2.5 here, but return to the median line, lower boundary. I just think it fits better. You know, it's, again, no way to know. Well, okay, think about what the implication would be if that's a 1, 2 relative to where the next opportunity is for the 4th to catch the ride for the 5. Well, we know, right, the 38 would be a natural target. That's not not too bad as it relates to our algo target and our 100, right? So if we were going to take this and move it up a little bit, we'd have this area here as a potential contender for the 4th. There's our algo target, assuming this holds, this 65 holds, and we don't know if that's going to hold yet. There's my 100. So I've got a contender here for the 4th to finish this as a C, to finish this, well, and that's the old count. So that would have this as the 4, and the 5 is to come. Right, so that's certainly one possibility. Now, but think about in terms of where we could be. If this is 1, 2, we're looking for the relationship between the 2 all the way up to the 3 high, looking for the 4th to be relative to the length of the 3rd. Right, high probability zones being the 38. Well, think about it for a second now. If I have this as the low in the alternate count, remember that the alternate count has this coming down and that being the start of my one wave. Well, the fib draw is exactly the same. Do you see that? So if this is 1 and this is 2, right? And then we're going up as I have it. So this is going back to the alternate count, right? Just to not to confuse you, but so if that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we are starting from the beginning of the one wave, looking for our 50. Do you see what happened there? Nothing happened. So the pull is exactly the same. Swing low, swing high. Am I a buyer at the 50 or am I a buyer at the 38? That's the only distinction between the two. So there's almost no way to tell what we're going to have until we see the result, right? Do we pivot down here? Right? That's the first question. Do we pivot down here? And how far are we going as to whether or not it's a 2 or a 3? Right? 2 going into a 3, or if this is the 1, right? So here's the alternate, right? So here the impact is after the fact, because if this is 1, 2, and 5 is still up here, we have less to go. Right? It's more a function of, I know it's annoyingly complex, but here's the reality. If this is a 3, 4, then our target for our 5th is different than if this is 1, 2. Do you get that distinction? If it's 1, 2, then our target for the 3rd is way up here. This would be putting our target. If that's a 1, our 3rd would be way up here, called 13,000. The 4 to come, 5 to come, and the 4 is over here. Right? If that's 1, we're going down for the 2. We know the 2 will be, the 3 will be very close to the negative 100 relative to how deep we go here. So if I put that back into perspective, so do you see that distinction? If it's 1, 2, we're looking to be a buyer at the 38, looking for a push up here. Here would be a natural target here. Here's my algo target. That would complete the 3, 4, 5. Then from there, we'd be looking for the 50. Do you see that difference? So again, the pull doesn't change, but if we're going up here to complete the 4, 5, the next buy is at the 50 because that would complete the 1. This would be the 2. Right? So it's tricky on, Bitcoin. Oh, it's never easy. So, you got to kind of make a judgment call there and use your tools best you can to try and identify, is the opportunity here at the 38? Because again, of course, the other conundrum is that you could have a wave 2 that was just as, so strong it only made the 38. So there's just no easy answer here other than look for the evidence relative to how this moves. If and when it starts to come down, do we come down in 5? What kind of swing relationships do we have there? Because this retracement as relates to whether the pivot is here or the pivot is here, it's no help, right? Because there is no difference between what we're measuring from swing low to swing high. No difference. It's 3 or a 1. That's where the difference is relative to where we're going next. So, we'll be able to identify it a little bit more. Now, what will be easier is if we are going to pivot here and we get the reaction at the 38 and we start heading up here. Right? Well, that's gonna help us in terms of our inclination as to what's more likely is that this is a 3, 4. We're going up to the 5, right? Depending on what happens here at the 38. And you can see here we've got all these other variables here. Here's that shelf of prior resistance. We don't have a lot of help from the market, from the volume profile, I should say. And then we got a few low volume nodes, but it's not meaningful until you get down to the 618. But you've got your point of control right here at the 50. That's of interest. It's just no easy answers, guys. No easy answers. Is it a 3 or is it a 2? Or pardon me, I should say, is this a 4 or is it a 2? Tricky. I wish I could give you an easy answer. Here's what I can tell you. We have a good contender for this to be a B. If you're a short seller, that's not a bad place to be looking for a short because that looks like a strong contender based on the subdivision that we see in there. So if I go back here, right, there's a reasonable short there if you're comfortable going short. So if that were the case, then maybe that's just your 1, 2 starting up. If you're not, so you can look at that. So you would have a very low risk. So if I go to my short, so if you short it right here, let me push this off to the side so we can see. So if you're a short right there, Your stop is just on the other side. Target would be down here. There's 7.5 to 1. Nothing wrong with that if you're comfortable going short. Now, where do you take profit? Well, you know, in that case, I'd be looking at it this way. I'd be looking at the algo target. So swing low, swing high into the golden zone. I'd be looking as a target right there. All right, so I got 9 to 1. If you're comfortable as a short seller, nothing wrong with that. That is the trade right now, sitting looking at Bitcoin. If you're not comfortable being short and you're a buyer only, well, we got to take that off, and now you're just waiting to see. Do we come down in 5? Is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 coming in here to put us at the 38, or is it, you know, is there more movement here, and that this could just be the one of the one, right? Because if we're going all the way to the 50, this is all got to get way down here. If we're going to the 50, third's going to have to be fairly substantial, and that one doesn't look like it's enough for a third to come all the way down here. So it could just be the one wave of the, it could be the one wave of the one wave of the third, if that makes sense, right? Because we got a long way to go to get down to the 50. All right, guys, I wish I had some easier answers for you. I mean, aside from the opportunity to be a short seller there with these targets, just no way to know on the buy. We just got to look for that subdivision. How far do we go? What does it look like? What are the wave relationships? If you're looking to be a buyer, those are the tools you have to work with. And that's it. All right, guys, I went long today. I know that's a lot of back and forth and indecision. It's just there's no way to be definitive about what we have there. So we wait and see. All right, guys, that's it for today.